It's time to talk Gonzaga basketball.
Get ready.
Insiders Jim Meehan and Richard Fox bring you the latest games and standings for the Gonzaga Bulldogs on Gonzaga Basketball Insiders.
Hello and welcome to the Zags Basketball Insiders podcast, NCAA Tournament Edition. I'm Jim Meehan of the Spokesman-Review. I cover Gonzaga. Richard Fox is with us. He's the television analyst for Gonzaga basketball on KHQ, SWX, and Root. And March Madness is here. It's the best time of the year, with apologies to Christmas and vacations and holidays and birthdays and even the Masters, Fox. That tells you how big it is from a golfer. So let's get caught up here with what's going on with the Zags. They're the third seed in the West region. They're going to Denver to play number 14 Grand Canyon. Denver, better known as Richard Fox's hometown, and also been good to the Zags, not only with Foxy, but Josh Perkins, Matt Bolden. Anyone I'm missing from
Chauncey
Denver?
Billups, he gets some attention. Chauncey Billups, you know.
Well, he gets some love because he helped Perk, I think, kind of develop as a point guard. I can't think of any other Zags from Denver. Can you?
Oh, you were thinking just the Zags. No, I think that's the three of us. I mean, obviously, okay. all three all-time greats, clearly, and
no question.
You know, legendary status. Yeah,
no question. Denver's been good to the Zags with those three guys. Also been a little iffy in tournament relations. How the Zags have done there. I think they went 2-0 in 2016. Speaking of Josh Perkins, I believe he might have been with that crew. 11 seed, they won twice and went on to Chicago. And then 11 seed in 2011. And they, again, pulled off a big win in the first round, St. John's, and lost to BYU the year before the Cougars joined the WCC, the Jimmer Fredette team for BYU. So, Foxy, I'm taking your road tripping this week back to the homeland to watch the Zags.
No, I am not actually, but we're going down there in a couple weeks, 3 weeks for spring break, and so I'm staying here. But after we get off the pod, I'm gonna see if I can get my dad a couple tickets for my brother and him. And it's I was down there in 2016. That team was, if everybody remembers, was the team that effectively had to win the conference tournament to get in, with Sabonis and Wiltshire, and they just peaked at the right time and really were about 60 seconds away from getting to the Elite Eight. A couple mistakes down the stretch against Syracuse, and I think they would have been there. But that was a lot of fun. I think they beat Seton Hall, or maybe it was Providence, and then they played Utah when they had Pirtle and Kuzma. That was a good Utah team. But Eric McClellan was playing well. Perkins, I want to say Silas was on that team too. And obviously, with Wiltshire and Sabonis doing what they did, they were just too much. That was a lot of fun. I had a great time doing that.
That was the year. I just remember Sabonis taking it to Pirtle, who was the projected, lottery guy, and I thought Domus really had a big night against him. Well, all the Zags did. They won that game pretty easy. But let's go on to recap the WCC tournament last week in Las Vegas. Then we'll take a long look ahead here at Gonzaga, the West region, the NCAA tournament. But first, if you'd have told me the Zags would have a knockdown drag out with San Francisco and then lead St. Mary's by 37, I'm not sure I would agree with you, Foxy. But well, on second thought, with Gonzaga this year, anything's possible. We've come to realize that, and even what happened in Vegas. I give credit to the Dons. They played hard. Kyle Bankhead, I'm sure, had the scout. I thought they had Gonzaga scouted pretty well. Khalil Shabazz was outstanding for most of the game. Tyrell Roberts, the WSU transfer, was very good. But I will say I never got the sense the Zags were going to lose that game. Shabazz got his points, 26. I think he hit 6 threes, 9 of 24 from the field, which the Zags probably a little disappointed with how many he scored, and Roberts, but shooting percentages probably in line with what they were hoping going in. What did you see that night when the Zags beat San Francisco?
Well, I mean, I think Shabazz within the conference this year was probably the best one-on-one scorer. You could argue maybe Shelton, but Shabazz just has a shake to his game that's pretty unique. I think 9 of 24. I think you tip your cap to Gonzaga, and he missed some open ones, but they forced him into some tough ones. Look, other than Robinson Shabazz, the rest of the team shot about 40%. And you just saw how hard it was for San Francisco to get anything going other than those two guys. Gonzaga had 22 assists on 27 field goals made, really good, really effective sharing the ball on the offense, and then it came really easy for them. 4 players in double digits. Watson was tremendous. I thought he was on his way to being player of the tournament after that performance. 20 points and 7 rebounds, and Timmy was just himself. Solid. 17 and 8 plus those 5 assists, and San Francisco. And I'm 100% biased with my relationship with Bankhead, and I chatted with him or texted with him a little bit afterwards, and he just said, look, we're just trying to muck it up as best we could. They were not going to guard Greg and Watson, fully aware that both of those guys were capable of knocking down shots. But my presumption there is that they wanted just someone other than the usual suspects to have to beat them, and both Watson and Greg did that. They stepped up and made shots, and that was the ball game. Yeah,
the assist totals, the point totals kind of spread out, assists spread out, just kind of showed you the balance that has kind of developed here in the last month or so in that offense. Let's move on to the next night. Gonzaga St. Mary's, round 3, big showdown, break the tie, 1-1 in the regular season, seeding at stake, conference tournament title at stake, and the Zags, it was just a beatdown from start to finish. I didn't see that coming. I will be honest. I really thought it would be just another grinder and back and forth tight, maybe in the 60s, low 70s. Zags just took that thing from the start and never let up. How did they do it, Foxy?
Well, I think it's the best defensive effort they had all year. I think they held Eastern Oregon, that was more of an exhibition than anything else, to a lower field goal percentage, but it was really impressive. In particular, in the first half, holding St. Mary's under 30% from the field. They made a really good basketball team look like a bad basketball team. And I sometimes there's that snowball effect where I think it was Gonzaga imposing itself on St. Mary's, and then as we got further into the game, where maybe Gonzaga's not able to maintain that same level of defensive intensity. At that point, St. Mary's is in their own head and started missing some shots that we would expect them to make. And I was blown away with what they did defensively in the first half. They being Gonzaga. They were +7 on the glass. That follows up being positive on the glass against San Francisco. Things that bode well for this weekend. 17 assists on 29 field goals made. Again, very efficient on the offensive end. And your point earlier, just the balance offensively. And Smith back, second straight game against St. Mary's, a huge impact off the bench. In 27 minutes, 14 points, really efficient with the shot. I mean, and Timmy, 18 points in 20 minutes. I mean, that's a stat line you would expect against Portland, where you just don't need them to play. Yeah. So, I think it's interesting to see what Mahaney did at home in that stretch and how hot he got. The 2 games since then, he's averaging 8 points a game, shooting less than 28% from the field. And you look what he's done against the rest of the conference in the conference schedule. He was averaging almost 16 a game, shooting better than 43% from the 3-point line. Gonzaga just figured him out, and that was a huge part of, I think, the success they had. And talking about that 16 team playing their best at the right time, I think that would fit this group right now. It certainly feels like they are full stride right now. Mark's done a really good job of getting them to this place at the right time of the year.
Yeah, we talked to Mark after the game, and he pointed out, they played 125 minutes against St. Mary's with the one overtime, and probably led for what, 3/4, 4/5 of that, led the game, and did a pretty decent, a really good job, basically on Mahaney and Logan Johnson for all but, well, in Spokane, Logan was pretty tough to handle. He had a great night, but they shut down Mahaney pretty much, other than that, a couple minutes stretch in Spokane and those last 5 minutes down in Moraga. Did the same with Logan and Moraga, shut him down. And then in Vegas, same deal. So 1-2 against St. Mary's, but maybe doesn't tell the entire story of how close it was to 3-0.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga's gonna. They should feel like they should have, swept St. Mary's. I mean, I will. To be fair, Logan Johnson last couple games averaged 24 against the Zags. He had 20 down there. He was really the only guy who could get going for St. Mary's. I think Gonzaga's going to be happy not to see him anymore. I really liked his game. He was just could not shoot at all, at least not with any real volume. But just a very tough-minded kid. Lefty, a little harder to kind of be disciplined against the lefty sometimes, slasher, and he could really defend. They're going to have a tough time filling his shoes moving forward, St. Mary's. But I mean, we've watched all 3 games, and you tip your hat to St. Mary's. I mean, they won the game they needed to win, and they'll always be co-champions. But I think if you're being objective, even though we're obviously focused on the Zags, I mean, Gonzaga's clearly got more talent, and I think that was evident in Vegas, and also depth. Mark doesn't go real deep on his bench, but if he needs to, that the quality that's there versus what St. Mary's has is much better.
Yeah, no question. All tournament, voted for that myself down in Vegas, and had a tough call. I admit that Anton was outstanding both games, different ways. In the second game, it was defense and distributing and rebounding. First game, he scored it. Drew breaks the all-time scoring record, 18 points in 20 minutes. I think he had 17, missed 2 shots against San Francisco, so he's right there. Julian, I think, made a pretty solid case for first team. So I had all 3 of those guys on my ballot. I had Khalil Shabazz on there, not only because of how he played against the Zags, but what he did to beat Santa Clara in the overtime game the night before. Well, actually, that was Saturday night. And then I thought I needed to include a Gale, and I went with Dukas. I thought he was probably their best guy in the tournament all around. And for most outstanding player, I think I typed in Anton, and then I thought about it and tried to type in Drew, and the line lets you do both. It let you vote for both. So that's what I did. I voted for both. And I mean, I thought they were that close. Probably in retrospect, and maybe I should have just gone Anton. He's deserved more credit than he's got all along, but I thought, hey, Drew did some things down there as well. So I voted for both. What's your ballot look like from the tournament?
I'd probably go Johnson over Dukas. I just thought what he did against the Zags, that Dukas got into double figures, but really struggled, and I think you could see his lack of foot speed. It just makes it difficult for him against more athletic teams. Shabazz has to be on there. Anton and Drew. I thought about Pajemski when you asked me the question, but I just don't think they made it far enough. So, I'm really happy for Anton. He certainly deserved it. I'm really disappointed in you that you struggled so much after we gave so much grief to the coaches 2 weeks ago. So,
hey,
we're going to have to talk about this offline.
Than those guys did, in my opinion.
No, but good for him. And, with the career Drew's had, it's no one's going to argue that Drew Timme shouldn't be player of the tournament.
Yeah. All right, the big dance is here. Let's talk a little bit about Gonzaga's opener, Grand Canyon, a team that's actually a program that's been mentioned as a possible WCC addition with the loss of BYU. Phoenix, out of the schools out of Phoenix, has had some great success in maybe 8-9 years as a program. I think they went to the tournament in 2021, the COVID tournament in Indianapolis. They've got connections between the staffs. You've got Roger Powell, Gonzaga assistant, worked for Bryce Drew, Grand Canyon's coach at Valpo and also at Vanderbilt. And Mark Few and Scott Drew are very close pickleball partners. Could not get a scouting report on Bryce Drew's pickleball game yesterday at Selection Sunday. But Baylor will be at the same site. They're playing in Denver as well. So 2 Drews lining up in Denver, 2 brothers. And then obviously this is a team that a little bit more exaggerated than what I would compare to Gonzaga, but they got hot late. They won their last 6 games. I believe they shot over 50% in every one of those games. They're scoring in the 80s. When Seattle U beat them in the regular season, I think they were in the 50s twice. They beat them in the tournament. They had a couple games early on. They scored in the 40s. They lost the preseason player of the year to an injury in January. And here they are ripping off 6 wins at the end of the year and winning the tournament, the WAC tournament, as a 5th seed to make it. I just think this is a team that's playing very well with a lot of confidence. And I do not think this is the easiest of the 3 14s that I see on these brackets.
No, this would be a very good team in the WCC. I think that's the way to think about this group, and with what we've seen from Gonzaga this year, certainly not. They're playing at a level that we did not see 6 weeks ago. Gonzaga, but we saw Gonzaga struggle throughout the conference tournament against teams that historically, or even this year, you would have expected them to have dominate a bit more than they did. So I'm with you. I don't think this is a game where Gonzaga can just show up. I mean, and certainly you never do that in the tournament. Everyone's ready to play, but you're going to have to play well, is my point. You're not going to be able just to rely on talent and Drew or Strother if he gets hot. You're going to have to play a complete game. They've got 4 guys who can score in double digits. They really shoot the ball well. They're 16th in the country, shooting a little over 38% from the 3-point line. They make 9 a game. 7 players have range out there, shoot better than 32%, with a couple guys, maybe 3 guys, that are in the 40s. So they'll stretch you out defensively. They don't turn teams over. Bottom quarter of the country and turning people over only about 10 or 11 a game. But what they do a good job at the rim. They'll block some shots. They're ranked 3rd in the WAC. They're not a team that is really good with the ball. They're about even on assist to turnover ratio, 1 for 1. I think if you're Gonzaga, if you can just be disciplined defensively and force them to play into their clock, they're going to have a tough time creating their own, I think. But if they get you flying around because they can break you down with their dribble penetration in particular, all of a sudden you're helping off 3-point shooters. It's going to be difficult to help dribble penetration in this game because of how well they shoot it and how much they can stretch you out. So it's going to be actually, I think, a good game. I certainly expect Gonzaga to win, but I don't think we're looking at a 25, 30-point game.
No, I don't either. I think this is a pretty talented club, pretty balanced. Got some bigs, got some size, got some shooters, got a kind of a 6'6" wing named Bauman that's a designated 3-ball guy. And I think their leader is Ray Harrison, 6'4" guard. He had a great tournament down there. I think he scored 80 points in 4 games, 21 rebounds, 23 assists. Does it in a variety of ways. He can get to the rim. He's got pretty good size. Shoots it pretty good. And then a 4-man named McLaughlin, who kind of a bulky guy. He's like 235-ish, 6'7". Yep. And can bounce it a little, can score it in a lot of ways. 3-ball. I think they're going to present some challenges, especially with a penetrating guard against Gonzaga's guards, which if they handle it the way they handled St. Mary's in the last game, I think they'll be just fine. But we've seen earlier in the season, that Gonzaga struggled with those kind of guards. Got better, much better as the season went on, though.
It always makes you. Well, I should say I always look at is there defensively, how much can you help? And you look at Grand Canyon, they can put five guys out there on the floor that are all skilled, that can all score, and more importantly, can all shoot the ball. And so what that naturally does to your defense is it makes the distance you need to cover to help longer. It makes the distance you need to close out or rotate longer. And against a good team like Grand Canyon that will move the ball, won't take necessarily bad shots, and be patient swinging the ball around in the half court, that can lead to trouble. Really, Blackshear's a guard they have, I think 5'11". He's the only guy really who can't shoot the ball at all.
He's the one who's hurt, I believe, Foxy.
Is he hurt? Okay.
I think he's the one who had the knee injury, so they're playing with that.
So that's right. You're right. Forgive me. He's only played 12 games. But nonetheless, so they're really, every guy they put on the floor is going to be able to shoot the ball. So, it'll be interesting to see. But on the flip side, Jim, they got a guard Gonzaga too. So I think that's going to be the challenge for them, is if they can't get going from three, or they turn the ball over, I don't think they can effectively slow Gonzaga down. So I'd expect this to be relatively high scoring. And, the one thing I would say about the Pepsi Center, it's a good gym for shooters. You're not in some big football arena with, this void behind the basket. If a kid can shoot it, throughout the course of the year, he's probably going to shoot it about the same clip in that game. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I mentioned the Zags kind of, and I talked to a lot of the players about this yesterday at Selection Sunday, that November, early December Zags team, and now, and what they're playing like now, the progress that's been made over those couple of months. If you look back, they were having major turnover issues in the first, month of the year. Guard play was called into question. Defense was called into question. Kind of their toughness, I thought, was even challenged at times. And I would say on every one of those categories, they have made pretty marked improvement. Now, the defense isn't shutting down folks like the 2017 defense, but as we've talked about before, they are playing better at that end of the floor. Fewer mistakes, better rotations, better against dribble penetration. I think all those things bode well for the tournament, and particularly against Grand Canyon, because I think Grand Canyon obviously has some toughness. They played with their backs against the wall and pulled off a bunch of wins to get back to the tournament. Mm-hmm. They've got good guard play. They're just a tough-minded crew, and I don't think there'll be much in the way of back down from them come Friday. Kind of a game I think the Zags better go out and play well, or they're going to find themselves in the second half of a tight game, and maybe that crowd switches to the underdog. We'll see. But I think they have made some improvement in areas that were kind of deficient early in the year.
I don't disagree at all. This is not a great defensive team, but it is certainly an improved defensive team. And we've talked about it now for a while. Jim, can they put those stretches together in a 40-minute game where they are elite on that end of the floor? And we have seen that now for the last, call it 5 weeks, where it's a 4, 8, 12-minute stretch, either in a half or overlap in halftime, where they really are focused, locked in, create a lot of issues for the other team. And then that's when they built their cushions. And, I'm convinced you can do that in the tournament and make a run. Now, if we're having this conversation in a week, as we get into the second round, that's when I think you start getting a little nervous about if you can't play that extended defense for a prolonged period of time. But against Grand Canyon, I think they're good enough. I'd expect them to win. I think we both agree it's going to be probably more competitive than the seedings would initially indicate.
Yeah. My advice would be play like you did against St. Mary's, not the way you did
all the
against
time.
San Francisco.
All the time.
Yeah, the rest of the year. Play like that. That's a good. I'm gonna go
on a limb. If they play like they did in the first half against St. Mary's defensively, maybe you and I could start looking at flights to Houston.
In the next round, if the Zags were to win, it's going to be interesting. They have to watch the play-in game, Arizona State, Nevada. And the winner of that plays TCU, which is the 6th seed. I've watched TCU a lot. I love that team. You talk about another tough-minded team. Great guard in Miles. A lot of guys who can just play. They're very good all-around players, both ends of the court. They went and beat Kansas by something like 20 at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. I would project them as the opponent, but Arizona State's playing pretty good here at the end of the season as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it was them. Either one of those teams, again, are going to put a test in front of the Zags, because Arizona State's got great athleticism. They've got some individual playmakers that are just a handful with size. And so TCU, I think, would be more of a grinder type game. I think Arizona State would be more of an up-tempo game. I do not know much about Nevada, so my guess is they'll probably be the one that comes out of it, just because I haven't been doing my homework on the Wolfpack like I should. What do you make of a potential second-round matchup with any of those teams?
Look, I don't think I want to play TCU. That is going to be just a physical, the gauntlet that would be physically. They are big. They are very athletic. They're aggressive. They're not very skilled. They shoot it terribly from the 3-point line, something like 30%. But then on the other hand, they hold teams about 30% from 3 as well. They really guard at a high level. They're good on the glass. They get about 11 offensive rebounds. It's like playing Michigan State, but they're better. And they've got more guys. And that team, I think they lost last year in the second round to Arizona, who was the number 1 seed. They're a really tough group. They brought back most of those kids. So, that would be a game, in my opinion, where if Gonzaga can get out early and create a situation where the tempo has to be up, sped up, I think that would bode really well for them. But if they get into a situation where TCU can control the tempo and just make it that slugfest, I would worry for Gonzaga. That would oddly be a game for Efton Reed to actually play some meaningful minutes, just because of the size he has, and you're not worried about foul trouble with him. And it would just be, Efton, I need you to go out there, be smart about those fouls, but be big. Because what I don't want is to have Drew Timme or even Anton having just a bump against those guys for 37, 38 minutes. I think that by the end of the game, that would wear them down.
Yeah.
Arizona State, they're not great offensively. Shoot it, low 30s from 3, low 40s from the field, but they're really good defensively. The whole team's under 40%. But I'm with you. I think that game would feel more like a West Coast game. You'd be up and down. I would like that matchup for Gonzaga quite a bit. And then I'm with you with Nevada. I mean, they're I don't know a ton about them. They're the middle of the road with respect to their offensive defense in the Mountain West. They shoot it okay, 44%. And then, defensively, those teams are shooting about 42%. It doesn't sound like much, but that's going to be a physical, athletic team. But again, I just like this style of play, and that's so much of this, as you know, Jim, is the style the other team wants to play, the matchups you have with them. And if Gonzaga plays TCU, they will not have played a team with that kind of physicality, that length of athleticism in months. And that's not to say they couldn't win that game. I would imagine they'd be favored, but that's not a matchup. That's a matchup you'd hope to avoid until the second weekend if you could.
Let's look at the West region. The Zags are the 3 seed in the West. Number 1, Kansas, which was, I thought, in pretty good shape to get the overall number 1, but that went to Alabama, which won the NCC regular season and the tournament title. Kansas wins the Big 12 regular season, second in the conference tournament without Coach Bill Self. He was in the hospital. He had a heart procedure and missed the tournament. The word is that he will be back for the NCAA run, and this is a team that has This is a great team. I enjoy watching them. They are battle tested. They go at it every night. Very good defensively, really good offensively. Jalen Wilson, star player, probably the favorite, hands down. Well, not hands down, that's too much, but certainly the favorite, obviously, is a 1 seed. But I mean, and I just think they're so used to this, the tournament, the grind, and all those things. You've got UCLA number 2, but UCLA has lost a couple of guys in the rotation in the last week or so that are very important players. Now, they played well without them, full credit, but at some point I have to think that those 2 losses will be tough to overcome. And I think UConn is a very real candidate to survive this bracket. They're that good. They're top 10. They played in the Big East. They were on fire in Portland when I saw them, as good as anyone I've seen all year. Tailed off a little in the Big East. St. Mary's is the 5 seed in the West, so who knows? And Boise State with Leon Rice is the 10. So what do you make of this West region? I think it's pretty stacked up top with powerhouse programs.
Well, and Arkansas had a really disappointing year, but their talent level. Look, if you were trying to rate the talent on rosters, you wouldn't get to number 6 or 7 before you said Arkansas's roster. Oh, they have a lot of top shelf talent, and they just have not. They've had some injuries. Nick Smith was out for large chunks of the year. They're really young, and they've just been really inconsistent. But boy, I think they match up pretty well with Kansas. If anything, I think they're a little bit bigger, more athletic. That'll be a fascinating. That the committee's not doing Kansas any favors with that if that's who they end up playing. But Illinois is also a team that's kind of had some of the same inconsistencies. I'll be interested for St. Mary's. I mean, what does the game against Gonzaga do for them from a psychology,
psychological deal? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, big words are hard. What does that do for them going to the tournament? And then VCU they are good. And you talk about matchups. I think that's a terrible matchup for St. Mary's. Yeah. In fact, I predict that St. Mary's would lose that game. And I agree with you. UConn is tough. That's just funny. I forgot during the show that they'd already named Arizona. I said, are they really going to put Leon Rice and Tommy Lloyd in the same bottom half of the bracket? So I watched that UCLA game. You're right. I mean, I think it's Clark and I'm not sure if the big kid Bona, if he's going to play as a shoulder injury. Yeah. But I tell you what, Jim, they're so tough and they're so experienced. I'd expect them to get out into the second weekend. They're really, really hard to beat. Yeah. So it's not an easy region. Thankfully, Gonzaga doesn't have to play everybody. They just got to play the next team in front of them. But that's the thing about the tournament. I had somebody ask me this morning about, hey, I think the Gonzaga's bracket's shaped up all right, and I said, look, man, you got it. Every game is against a good team. Unless you're playing a 16 seed or maybe even a 15, but once you get to that 14 line, these are all really good basketball teams. You have to go beat people. And that's why we spend so much time thinking about how teams match up, because if you've got a bad matchup in a one game environment, you're not, anything can happen. Yeah.
I'm of the mind that in these 8-9 games in every region, this is Brandon right here. This is our spokesman bracket. Iowa, Auburn. I would not want to play either one of those teams if I were Houston, the number 1 seed. No. Illinois, Arkansas, you mentioned. I'm right there with you. They are fully capable of beating Kansas. Maryland, West Virginia. That's maybe the weakest of the 4, but both.
I agree. But they're like TCU. Like you're going into the game dreading it.
Yeah, it's no picnic to play either one of those.
It doesn't feel like basketball.
Yeah. East region, Purdue's the number 1. Memphis and FAU. Yeah. Now, Memphis is a trip to the dentist's office, too. I mean, that is no fun. So I predict at least one of those number 1 seeds goes down. That's my guess. I love it. I just think those teams, and Auburn would maybe be my pick. I think they're that good. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up with this. We've got Gonzaga versus Grand Canyon. We're not going to do the Final Four picks, no national championship picks. All I'm going to ask you, Foxy, is are we doing the podcast next Monday with Gonzaga still in the tournament or not?
Yes.
I'm with you. I think so too. Hey, that's going to do it. Appreciate everybody listening out there. You can find us where you find your favorite podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google. The Spokesman-Review website is spokesman.com. Click on the Zags icon. You can find us there. All our coverage from the season and the tournament will be there as well. So thanks for tuning in. Tell your friends. We'll catch you next Monday.